Okay, now that we've got our main menu, let's take the next step. Let's add a slider bar for the volume, something like that. So first thing what we're going to want to do is probably build our slider bar. So we'll get a couple different components. Let me drag my graphics tool in here again. So I went online and just searched for some random stuff. I kind of tweaked some of these a bit and ended up making this one for the kind of the background of the bar and then the knob itself. And then I went and made these corners transparent. But really you can do it however you want, um, however fancy or simple you want to get. Now, first we're going to want to go in and add those in as actors. So let's create a new actor. We'll call it slider. And let's go ahead and add a frame, choose the image, and I've already got them saved in here. So we'll do slider bar, we'll add that, and let's give it a name. How about slider? And save that. We'll go back. Let's add a new actor type. And what do we call the other one? We called it slider, so let's call this one, how about knob? Create. And click to add the animation, click to add the frame. Let's choose the image, and there we go, knob. I just had those saved on the desktop. Okay, so we've got our, let's give it, well, we're not really changing the animations here much, but we can go ahead and call it knob. Like if you want, you could do the same thing we did with the changing of the color here for level 1. You could do that kind of stuff for this knob as well. I'll just keep it simple, and because I think there's ends up being a lot that we got to do with this. So I'm going to do a lot of trial and error here, just show you uh, common pitfalls you might run into. So let's grab the slider, and first thing, let's put it in here, and let's grab the knob, and we'll drop it in as well. Switch to this tool. Now it might be kind of hard to select, like if I click here, I'm selecting the whole thing, and then it's a little tricky to sometimes know which one you're grabbing. You can right click on here and choose send to back or just send backwards. You can just send the slider bar all the way to the back. Uh, and let's just keep doing that. Or send back. Did this to me earlier. Sometimes it's a pain. Let's see if we can move it and grab that. And let's choose bring to front. Now, okay, so we can now grab it. Yeah, so depending on where you click, let's bring that to front. Okay, so you can see it's a little cumbersome to work with sometimes, but we'll go ahead and add it there like that. So it's just sitting there, and let's save, and let's test this scene. Let's see what happens. Okay, compiling. Okay, see stuff's moving all over the place, right? So it thinks these are actors and they can't collide with another. They're affected by gravity, so they're kind of moving all over. So let's see if we can fix some of that first off. So if you remember, let's go back into settings. We had down here groups. We have actors, players, regions, tiles, enemies. So let's create a new group and let's call it something like controls. And controls collide with nobody. They're just all by themselves. And there's probably a bunch of different ways you can do this. Um, that's kind of the fun of programming. You get to do it how you think might be a neat way to do it or try different things. So now we've got to make sure these actors are part of that. And we don't really care about these because these aren't doing a whole lot, but these right here, we want to be able to go over each other. So let's take the slider, let's click on properties, and let's make it part of the controls group. And then same thing with the knob, part of the controls group. Let's save that, go back here, and let's test the scene again. Let's see what happens this time. It's good to go testing it often. Don't do a whole bunch of changes because then you won't know how to fix stuff. You won't know what you did. Okay, so now it's sitting there. It looks pretty good. Now let's try and figure out how to go ahead and grab it and get it to follow the mouse around. So in order to do this, we're going to have to go into the behaviors or events again. So there's different things. There's updating and drawing. So for the updating part, this is where we want to mess with the control of this scene. So notice before we use if mouse is down on the level 1, so we're going to do the same kind of a thing here. So let's play around with some of these code blocks. So if, let's grab user input. So if the mouse is down on, oh, see it picked slider. We want to choose the knob. Come on. Let's see. Okay, had to kind of look into some of that. So what I ended up doing is like I wasn't able to select it. So um, I went back to the scene and then kind of fiddled around with it a little bit. You can even move it over and then go back to events, choose the actor, and then you can select it. And then you can go back to the scene and move it back. I know I thought there was some other way to do it, but I can't figure it out right now, like maybe tabbing through or something. Let's go back to our events though. So if the mouse is down on the knob, we want to be able to say that we're moving the volume knob around. So we can go ahead and drag that into here. What we're going to want to use here is an attribute. So let's go to attribute, and there are none right here right now. Let's create an attribute and let's call it setting volume. And the type of variable is a Boolean. Boolean just means true or false. There's also like numbers, fonts, there's all kinds of different things in here. So Boolean, okay. So we're gonna want to, there's getters and setters, so we'll set it. So if the mouse is down on knob, we'll say setting volume to comparison, and we'll set it to true. So that means we're setting the volume to true. So we're in the process of adjusting it. Now this isn't going to work, but we could fiddle with it later. So otherwise, it'll be good for us to go through this. Set the volume to false. And we could drag this whole thing right into there. Now on the drawing side, we want to be able to move it. So we'll take another flow control. And now let's check that attribute. And instead of setting, we're going to be getting. So if the setting volume is equal to true, let's go back to flow. And there's some comparison things here. So if setting volume is equal to, and we're using Booleans, comparison, true. You can also, I think, get that through here. I thought that was, oh yeah, right here. So if setting volume is true, what we're going to want to do is move kind of, oh no, this was switching the animation, but let's take our actors and position. So we'll set, and we don't care about the X position, we're just moving the Y up and down. So set the Y to something for, let's choose our actor. Hopefully, no, it doesn't let us pick it again. So we'll go back to our scene. We'll move, no, that'll work. And we'll move this so we can select it. Okay, now where do we want to move it to? Let's move it so that it lines up with the mouse. So let's see if there's user input, if there's a mouse position. Okay, here we go. So we'll line up the Y with the Y of the mouse. And let's go ahead and drag that into there. So if we're setting the volume, if we're in the process of setting the volume, so if that's true, let's set the Y of knob 1 to the Y of the mouse. Otherwise, it shouldn't move at all. Okay, we've got our updating and we've got our drawing. Let's test this out. What we've done is little bits of changes, and we'll see how we need to tweak it from here. Okay, and yeah, we still haven't moved it back, but okay. So you'll notice it follows the mouse, but when I go up, I'm still holding the mouse button down. It doesn't move up. So what's happening here is you'll notice when I click on it, it lines up directly with the top of that mouse cursor. And when I move it up here, it's not, the mouse isn't on top of the knob anymore, right? So it only will move down, right? So what we want to do, so let me show you. So in updating here, if the mouse is down on the knob, set this to true, otherwise set it to false. So it's coming into this otherwise knob. So let's get rid of this. What we want to do is if we've let go of the mouse, then set it to false, not in the otherwise case. So let's grab another if statement, and maybe this will make sense once we put it in here. So if we're going to need a couple an and condition, and let's pull our attributes, and we're going to need a comparator. So if setting volume is true, right? If we're in the process of setting the volume and let's say the mouse was released, now we can drag these in. So if we were setting the volume and the mouse was released, then we want to set it to false. So let's put that in this if statement. Let's move this in here. We can throw that in the trash, and let's put that in. So hopefully this makes this sense. So now we don't have to worry about where the cursor is versus the knob, anything like that. It's just set it to true, and then once we release, it's going to set it to false. Let's test this. Let's see how this works. And I forgot to move the knob again. Okay, so now we grab it. You notice it jumps right away, so the top line of the knob lines up with that top part of the mouse. Here we move down, and we can move up, and it all seems to work really well. But now, look at that. So it's going all the way up, all the way down. So what we want to do is limit it to this section of the slider. So now let's tackle that part of this. And before we go further, maybe I should move this over again. Okay, so what we're going to want to do is figure out what our top and bottom ends of this are. Okay, so if you notice, when I have it up here, down here, you'll see the y coordinate. So let's grab this thing. So right around here, it's at 126. Oops. And I believe it's the top part of it. So there's 112. Let's just make it 110, just to try and be simple. So 110 is the top. And let's see, where's our bottom end here? Let's go to right around here. How about 350? Just to try and use some simple numbers. So sometimes it helps to take notes. So let me open, this is like a notepad. So the top was 110, the bottom was 350. Okay. What we're gonna want to do is, that's probably in the drawing section, right? As we're moving this, we're gonna want to limit it to that. So let's get some if statements here. So if, let's see, let's check the mouse. If the y of the mouse, how about, is less than, probably. So if the y of the mouse is less than, and what was our number again? So if it's less than 350, okay, and we're going to also want to check if it's greater than, so let's go to user input, and we can right click also and copy and paste. And the y of the mouse is greater than, what was the other number, 110. Right, so let's drag one of these into that side and one of these into this right side. And let's drag this whole thing in here. Okay, so if the y is within this range and the y is within that range, then let's set the y equal to, or the same as the y for the mouse. And then we'll drag this whole thing back in here. So now we should be limiting our range. Let's, again, a little change, we'll save it, and we'll test this scene. Let's see how it did. And then we can go tweaking these numbers depending on how it looks. Okay, goes up, there we go. So it's stopping there. And it looks like, it's going down a little further than it is going up. You can just tweak those numbers. All you got to do is just up it here. So, or actually that was the top part, right? So make this maybe 105 or something like that. Another thing you can do, just for little tiny tweaks for personal preference, is, remember how it was aligning up with the top part of the mouse cursor, right? If you want it to line up, the knob, the middle of the knob to line up, right? You can look at how tall this knob is, and then just add or subtract whatever that is. So let's look at our scene. So the top of the knob is 340, is at 348 or 347. I'm looking down here, right? And the bottom of the knob is 379, right? 347, 378. So let's get our calculator. 379 minus 347, 379 minus 347, so 32, and then let's divide that by 2, 16. So 16 is the width, or the height right here. So you can always take that and instead of setting the y to the y of the mouse, you could say set the y to the y of the mouse minus 16, something like that. We should be able to do that. Pretty simple. Where's math? There should be math here somewhere. Okay, yeah, it is here. So numbers and text, math. Um, so here's a minus, right? Set, let's drag this out. The y of the mouse minus 16. And then we can drag that back in. And let's go ahead and test this out. Now it should be lined up. The middle of the knob should be lined up with that top part of the mouse cursor. There we go. That looks better. Okay. Again, maybe we need to like adjust how far down it goes. Yeah, that's the other thing. If I move the mouse really quickly so that the mouse is below this, you'll notice it doesn't move it anymore. So let's see. So if I move it really fast, it stopped moving the slider to follow the mouse. So that's something else we can fix. So here we say if it's less than 350, right, you would just put in another if statement. If it's less than 350, set your position to 350. If or I'm sorry, if it's greater than 350, set it to 350 automatically. And then if it's less than 110, just set it to 110 or 110 minus 16. So then you won't have to deal with that. That's a little bug you can fix. Okay, so now what we want to do is actually have this do something and store a number so we can set the volume. So we're going to use another attribute. Let's create a game attribute. And let's create a new game attribute and let's call it, how about volume? Let's do volume level just in case. Okay, so we're going to use a number and the initial value we can say, I don't know, say 0. Okay, so set volume level and get, and there's the getters and setters, right? Okay, so now that we have our volume level variable or attribute, we're going to need to set it. So let's drag that in here. Now to figure out what to set this to, let's go look back at our scene. So when the bar is down here at the bottom, we want it set to 0, and when it's at the top, we want it set to 100 or 1. It kind of depends how Stencil looks at it, but actually looks at it as 100. Okay, so the total distance from the top to the bottom is 240, right? 350 minus 110. So what we want to do is measure how far the slider's moved up compared to the 240, and we want it as a fraction. So I can put this back and go back here. So we're going to pull out some of the math. So let's get a subtraction. And so our total distance again was 240. So whatever we do, we're going to divide by 240, right? The distance we have. Now to find the distance, let's look again. Down here it's 350. So however far off of the 350 we are. So let's take 350 and subtract actually the position, not of the mouse, but the position of the knob, right? So factors, and here we go, the Y of, here we go again, the Y of the knob. So the distance off the total divided by 240. And this is going to be a fraction, so we're going to want to multiply this by 100 so to get a nice round number, 100. And that's what we're going to want to set the volume level to. Oh, we can drag that in here. Okay, so this has been setting our attribute volume level, but now we actually have to make it do something as well. So we had the drawing and the updating. Let's go over here and let's look at our, it's probably under game attributes, or actually, oh no, sounds. So sounds, right here we have set volume to a set percentage. So let's take that. And then what are we going to set it to? Well, our game attribute, and we'll use the getter. And here's our volume level, and drag it in there. So as we go updating, go up, set our volume to that level. Actually, we could probably also do this in the drawing stage as well, I think. I'm not sure. That'd be something you could test out. But yeah, so it'll always be going and setting, adjusting that volume level to match our variable. Now, one thing that's going to be useful here and in other cases is being able to debug this information, right? It'd be great to know what it's actually setting it to. So we can go to the flow, and then here's a debug, see, and let's print something. So we could print anything we want. We could type hello, all kinds of things, right? So let's actually print the volume level. So every time the volume level changes, we'll set it and then we'll print it. So let's go back to our game attributes and let's use getters and let's print the volume level. And we could probably do a whole bunch of extra text and all that, but let's just do this for now. And let's go ahead and test it and we'll see if we can output this. And this, you'll notice this shows up in the log view. So we can open the log view and then let's test our scene and let's go back to, let's open the log view back up, and it keeps doing that. It keeps covering it back over, but you see this is all the stuff that the code's doing. Okay, so we have our game there, and so you can see it set up the initial screen, and then as we move it there, you can see it's getting set. You see 22%, 28%, and it should go up to about 100%. All right, it's a little bit off because we did that minus 16. So if you want to set it to exactly 100% and 0, you just take that 16 off as well. So now let's test it. So we have the volume really high. Let's play it. And there we hear the volume. And then now let's play it again. And this time we'll set the volume low. Let's get our log viewer in here again. So we'll set it down. Let's see if we can get it. We can get, okay, 7%. Let's play level 1. So there you can hear it's a lot quieter now, if you can hear it at all. Okay, so then once you probably then want to get rid of this when you're not debugging and for playability and everything, just so the game isn't doing as much processing, even though that's probably not very much for it. So there you go. We've you can go fixing this back up. We have our volume slider. It's setting the volume, and we went ahead and tested it. Next, we'll go through looking at some of the character stuff, being able to toggle between a couple different characters. Thank you.